Need your daily fix on mixed martial arts?
We're going to kind of recap Bellator 155 from UFC 198.
Who's who?
Kind of a controversial decision.
And who's not?
I couldn't figure out why, and then it hit me.
Well, don't you fret, because Golden State Media Concepts got you covered. Get your daily dose of MMA podcasts. Everything from the UFC, Bellator Fighting Championship, Extreme Cage Fighting, Invicta Fighting Championship, and so much more. Join us as we talk about some of the biggest names in mixed martial arts. We've got you covered here on Golden State Media Concepts MMA Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC MMA Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Arnel De Leon, and hopefully your day is going bueno. Whoever you are, wherever you are, no matter what you're doing, no matter what struggles you are persevering through right now, we are all persevering through struggle in this very tough year yet again. But as we are pushing forward, I will say this though. Hopefully your day is relaxed, it's chill, it's calm. Outside right now, it is raining, and I'm one of those weirdos out there who likes it when it's raining, who likes the harsh gush winds. Being a person who used to live in the Philippines and having relatives who live in the Florida area, when there are a lot of floods happening and huge hurricanes, you'd be surprised how relaxing it is. You'd be surprised. Nothing more relaxing than staying home, drinking some hot chocolate, knowing you can't get out because there's harsh rains and thunderstorms happening. Alright? Well, I find it kind of relaxing, and summer is right around the corner, and with summer happening, with spring break also around the corner, hopefully things are going to go die down just a little bit, things will be more relaxing. I'll be going to Texas, and Texas is one of the, I think Texas, Mississippi, and some other area, somewhere in the East Coast or somewhere in the Midwest, is currently reopening up. So I'm going there to go visit my sister. My sister just bought a house. So her and her husband they just bought a house. They'll be selling their old house. Me and my family are going to go there. We're going to visit. We're going to celebrate with her. And we will be safe. We'll try to be safe. We will try to be healthy. Texas is one of the only states that are going through the process of reopening up. Along that in Mississippi, Los Angeles, as I'm speaking right now, gyms are reopening up. I think I checked up somewhere that it turns out the AKA gym, the one that Daniel Cormier and Khabib Nurmagomedov, the place where they train, that's reopening up. I just signed myself up for a gym membership for Crunch. Crunch just reopened up also. 24 Hour Fitness, I'm not really sure about that. But there are other gyms around the area, like LA Fitness, that's currently going through a reopening phase. And next week, it turns out that we are going to see restaurants have indoor dining, but they're at 25% capacity range. So yeah, things are pretty normal. Actually, if anyone here lives in Irvine, California, go to Irvine, you would not notice anything in terms of like COVID and pre-COVID, like what's going on, because that city is perfectly normal. Like people are walking around there without any masks as if nothing happened to them in the past year. It is strange. But that's the Irvine, California area. Los Angeles, we are slowly going through a reopening phase. We're going through a slow reopening phase. The fact that LA, that all the cases are dropping, makes it really awesome. LA is it's probably the biggest hotspot area next to San Francisco in California in terms of like money moving around and like a high population density. So consider that LA, that's reopening up. I'm not really sure about what's happening with San Francisco. San Francisco had it a lot more worse than Los Angeles in terms of the reopening and being impacted by COVID. So hopefully San Francisco, they get that the NorCal area, the Silicon Valley, hopefully their businesses is going to reopen up. There's a lot of money going through there. And Los Angeles is going through a reopening phase as well. Actually, a lot of my favorite restaurants are doing takeout, to-go orders, and are running pretty smoothly. So yay! Slow reopening phase. Things will get back to normal, hopefully by the end of this year. Even in the NBA, in the NBA and the MLB right now, they are slowly bringing in people to their stadiums to go play games. Yay! We're gonna have people finally these games. I'm in the Sacramento Kings in not the NorCal area, but right below the NorCal area, towards the direction coming to SoCal. Some areas, whether it be Sacramento, Stockton, where my family lives, very, very low population area. Very low population. Because there's very low population there, they go through less restrictive guidelines, which leads to a team like the Sacramento Kings having people in their basketball games. So knowing that, and knowing that Dana White is adamantly trying to go push for a show in Texas, I'm hearing some reports that it fell apart, some reports saying that it didn't fall apart. But while that's happening, I'm not sure for PFL, I'm not sure for Bellator. One Championships, they already have people in the arenas, closed event, but they still have some people going there at times. And they have like some audience members there in the One Championship shows. It's kind of off and on. But their shows, we kind of have a good idea what's happening there. UFC, they're trying to go get people back in the audience. So we are normalizing to regular sports. MLB, there's a rumor going around that they're going to go push to have 25% capacity in all their sporting events. 25%. And that's something to release. And if you're not able to get all 25%, then bring in like the fake, I was walking by a restaurant, and one of the restaurants had mannequins eating plastic food. Like they had plastic like decoration you'd see off like an IKEA or a Walmart, where you see like this like fake apple or this fake banana, and it's being held by like a mannequin, and that's like their way of making it seem like there's people there. Very smart and yet very creepy and weird. So today's podcast will be a news brief on what's going on in the weird, wacky world of mixed martial arts. And one of the most weirdest and wackiest things that's happened in the world of mixed martial arts was the Aljamain Sterling vs. Petyr Yan bout that happened this past weekend. So, for those of you who don't know, Petyr Yan, Aljamain Sterling, that incredibly fun bout, fast-paced action, a fight that everyone was excited for. But in that bout, Petyr Yan, he threw out an illegal knee on Aljamain Sterling, despite the fact that Petyr Yan was dominating, for the most part, in every round. Aljamain Sterling ended up becoming the UFC Bantamweight Champion, new UFC Bantamweight Champion. So there's a lot of controversy happening. I remember on Twitter, everyone saying, and the Academy Award for Best Actor goes to Aljamain Sterling, or the Oscar for the biggest cheater out there goes to Aljamain Sterling. And no matter what your viewpoint or opinion is on the events, or like on how the result was handled, Petyr Yan, he did an illegal move, and he got penalized for it. Now the question comes in on whether or not it was right for Aljamain Sterling to walk away with the belt. I firmly believe the idea that if a fighter were to cheat, like throw out an illegal knee and concuss their opponents, and they're a champion, their belt should be vacated, should be stripped. I'm not saying it should be rewarded to Aljamain Sterling. I'm saying, Petyr Yan, you will not go and keep the belt. You will not keep the belt, and you're getting money taken out of your fight purse. I don't believe that a fighter should be rewarded because of a penalization that the other did. I don't believe that. I think that is not right, especially considering the fact that Petyr Yan was winning. There was one judge that said that Aljamain Sterling was up by 1 in the scorecards, which I vehemently disagree with. The scoring for UFC 259, that was kind of bizarre. That was weird. We had some fighters, for instance, we had Israel Adesanya versus Jan Blachowicz. Israel Adesanya apparently lost some rounds, 10-8. There were some 10-8 rounds being given out. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, really? 10-8? And everyone agreed. Like Dana White specifically pointed that out in the post-fight presser, where he said that if a fighter were to win by 10-8, then that fighter who did the 10-8, who was scoring up, should have been dominating their opponent. But Israel Adesanya, he was winning in pretty much like every round. He won first half, and then the second half went to Blachowicz. And then from that moment on, you're now thinking to yourself, all right then, who had the better half? Was Izzy's first half better than John's second half? And that really was where the argument was. And for one judge to be like, yeah, apparently Jan Blachowicz, he dominated. And if you look at the fight stats, it looked like Jan Blachowicz dominated, but it didn't seem like that off the eye test. And I always say that you should judge a fight by both the eye test and the stats. So if the eye test looks very similarly, and that you're second-guessing yourself on who was winning, then you can look at the fight stats. I believe Jan Blachowicz, I believe he won 3 out of the 5 rounds. I believe he won 3, 4, and 5. But I wouldn't give him a 10-8. I really wouldn't. So with Petyr Yan, Aljamain Sterling, what is going on with them? Well, it turns out, coming in from Petyr Yan's coach, I'm reading this from MMAJockey.usatoday.com, that Petyr Yan's coach clears up corner confusion in UFC 259 DQ loss to Aljamain Sterling. So Petyr Yan, America's happy coach, Marcus D'Amata, recalls corner advice that was given to the Russian moments before he lost his bantamweight title. Yan, 15-2, someone in the UFC, was disqualified after striking Aljamain Sterling with an illegal knee in UFC 59. Questions were raised on Yan's decision to throw the knee when Sterling was a downed opponent. Now, current UFC lightweight champion Khabib Nurmagomedov, he was seated near the octagon during the fight. He told commentator on duty, Daniel Cormier, who was a friend of his, that he heard one of Yan's cornermen say, "Knee him," in Russian, which prompted Yan to throw the illegal strike. But Petyr Yan, his cornerman, went on to go talk to MMAJunkie.com and told him that that's not exactly how things unfolded. D'Amata was clearly heard yelling, "Just punch," 3 times in English. And there's video evidence of this, where you hear him, "Just punch, just punch, just punch." But then another Russian, there's video footage of this, you can go look this up. Another Russian, who was part of his corner, gave him different instructions, which Nurmagomedov translated as "knee him." Though Yan said in a post-fight interview that he couldn't hear any of his cornermen, D'Amata says Yan's coach told him they did not tell Yan for a knee. They just said to hit him. And I'm going to go quote D'Amata here. In his interview with MMA Junkie, he goes on to say, and I quote, "The 4th round was going exactly what we expected. Aljo was fading, shooting from far, and we ended up in this situation, which was kind of like the front of headlock, and we were extensively working on that. My 2 cents on that situation is that I was telling him, keep pushing the head down and just punch. Punch, punch, punch. Because he would have done the same thing he did to Jose Aldo, which was spinning to the back and working his ground and pound from there. Or just release and stand back up to try and knock him out. When Petyr Yan got in that situation, I was actually pretty happy that happened because that was a sign that Aljo was completely helpless. And I was pretty vocal saying, just punch, just punch, just punch. I don't know if the 2 cornermen behind me said to kick or to knee. I don't believe so. We spoke about that after the fight, and they both said they just hit him. I don't know who said they advised him to kick or knee. I believe it was Khabib telling DC, but again, Khabib wasn't in the commentating booth. He was just around. I don't know if he might have gotten confused. I don't know what happened. I don't understand Russian very well. I don't know what happened. I have no idea what they were saying. I know what I was saying. I know what I wanted him to do, which is pretty much push the pace down, keep him down, and maybe a TKO victory. So, what really happened with Petyr Yan and Aljamain Sterling? Here's my personal 2 cents here. The way how I viewed it was that Petyr Yan, he was at the heat of the moment. And what people don't remember is that early in the bouts, there was a situation when Aljamain Sterling, when he was going in for a takedown, when he was doing those like sluggish takedowns on his opponent, Petyr was able to stuff it, and upon stuffing the takedown, he hits a clean knee on his opponent. Clean knee to the face. So Aljo, he stood up from it, and the fight went on. So when it came to the 4th round, when it came to the legal knee, what happened was he expected Aljamain Sterling to go shoot on him, and then when he was able to stuff it, he saw Aljo about to stand up. And in his own mind, it looked very similarly to early in the fight when he downed Aljamain Sterling legally. So he thought to himself, alright then, I need him early on in the 1st round. I'm going to do it again in the 4th round. What he doesn't recognize was the fact that I think like there's a weird mental disconnect. Have you ever been in a situation where you genuinely believed in one thing, but it turns out it didn't happen? Where you genuinely believed that you left your wallet or your cell phone in the car, but in actuality, it was in your pockets. Or you genuinely believed you left something really important in your purse or in your bag, but it turns out it was like in your couch. It's like one of those instances where you're constantly telling yourself, oh, 100%, I know what's happening. I know for sure that I left the car keys in my left pocket, but it's not there for some reason, even though I'm 100% sure. What's happening? What the heck? And that's how it is with Petyr Yan and Aljamain Sterling. Petyr Yan, in his own mind, you have a tendency of doing this actually when you're like really tired or at the heat of the moment, where you visualize stuff that's not there. And in the Petyr Yan interview he had in the post-fight presser, he said that he believed that Aljamain Sterling was squatting because the last time he pulled the knee on Aljo back in the 1st round was when Aljo was squatting. He squatted, he was knee to the face, nothing came out of it. And he saw this scenario again in the 4th, and he thought to himself, oh yeah, he's obviously, squatting. He didn't see him squatting. Now, to us, we saw him knee a guy, and we saw Aljamain Sterling knees on the ground. That's what we saw. But for Petyr Yan, in his own mind, the way how he visualized it, the way how his brain processed it, it was, oh, this guy, he is on, like he's on his feet. He is squatting right now, and he's slowly going to get back up and going to go for a takedown. Because for the majority of the fight here, we have Aljamain Sterling shooting in for a takedown, and the way how I saw it, and the way from Petyr Yan saw it, it looked like Alja would go and shoot in yet for another takedown if no knee were to happen. So in his own mind, it was a legal shot. In reality, it was illegal. You're listening to the GSMC MMA podcast. Come back after a short break here with a news brief. See you soon.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
And we're back with the news brief here. Once again, you're listening to the GSMC MMA podcast. I am Arnel De Leon, and one fight that really stood out was Dominick Cruz versus Casey Kenny. Not because of the fight in itself, but because of the post-fight callouts. So Dominick Cruz, showing the far time is not against him, and he called out Hans. So for those of you who don't know Hans Molenkamp, he is an employee from Monster Energy. He is a representative from the organization, and Dominick Cruz called him out to a charity fight. So I'm reading an article from MMAfighting.com. Monster Energy responds to Dominick Cruz allegations against Hans Molenkamp. So blue chip UFC sponsor Monster Energy on Monday says the company is looking into allegations by Dominick Cruz that Hans Molenkamp, a business developer representative with the energy drink company, took advantage of his position with fighters for personal benefits. And here is a quote from a Monster spokesperson. Going to say that we take any such allegations seriously and are looking into it at this time. No further details were offered. Cruz, a former bantamweight champion, used his post-fight win speech in UFC 259 to call out Hans Molenkamp for a charity fight. So, Dana White, what his viewpoint on it was that, oh man, Monster Energy, it's a great company. It's awesome. He's pretty much shilling himself out for Monster Energy drink, saying it's been a great sponsor for us. It gives opportunities. Dominick Cruz, he can say whatever he wants. Monster Energy is so awesome. He even does say that Hans Molenkamp, yeah, the guy's a proper weirdo. He is a real weirdo, and there are a lot of people that want to beat him up, but Monster Energy is amazing. So Dominick Cruz said in the UFC 259 post-fight presser, he says, "Look at my face, look at my body. I get beat to death for a living. So when you're trying to force me and you text me if I don't comment on your page, if I don't give you an interview that you're going to take to pay my bills, what are we doing? Monster sponsors me, not you." A phone number used by Molenkamp for several years has been disconnected as of Monday. Whiteback Cruz claimed that he had several fighters had clashed with Molenkamp, but said it was Monster's decision whether or not to take action. White said on the whole that Monster had done above and beyond for UFC fighters, how awesome they are. He says that Hans is indeed a goofy dude, but you know what? Monster Energy, it pays their fighters. Molenkamp this past week started a GoFundMe page for funeral expenses for his former MMA coach. A post announcing that was filled with comments about Dominick Cruz callouts, and out of curiosity, I will go check up on this. So, Bill Dean Coach Chainsaw Family Fund. So it is a family fund set up by Hans Molenkamp, and it has currently raised $38,000, but its goal is $50,000. So it's raised $30,000. Really good. There are a lot of people who, as of 2 hours ago, as I'm speaking, are donating upwards of $100 for the passing away of Bill Dean. So, seems like a pretty nice guy. So Dominick Cruz, he's calling out Hans. Not sure what's going on there. From the way how I'm viewing it, I'm guessing that Dominick Cruz takes it personally on Hans for being a clout chaser. And I get the frustrations. I get it. Being a person who has a friend who is a clout chaser himself, I have a buddy who is trying to be an influencer. Like, he's gained, like, in the past year, he's gained 50,000 followers, but it's dropped down to, like, 43,000 followers. But, like he was really on it. On, like, getting pictures with, like, Logan Paul, Jake Paul, getting celebrities in his pictures, getting comments from big-time celebrities in order to get viewers and followers. It is frustrating. It is frustrating because there is an element of... Okay, have you ever, like, watched a show Pokemon? Or ever played a Pokemon? There's a Pokemon monster called Raticate. And my cousin made this analogy with Raticate. Raticate looks like the type of person who would try to, like, steal your money and then sell it for, like, a bigger price. He seems like a rat. And that's how I'm guessing Dominick Cruz is perceiving Hans. Like, he's looking at Hans and be like, look at this guy here, man. Taking picture with people who are more talented and big-time celebrities, or for him to get more followers, for him to get more money, man. This guy's making money off my back. Well, I understand Dominick Cruz, his position. It's understandably why he's frustrated. I was frustrated over my friend and their friends who do the same thing. You know, try to be influencers, trying to gain, big followers. Heck, if you go on YouTube, there are a lot of communities who specifically are trying to hustle their way into like getting views, getting followers, getting people to comment and stuff, like hashtagging famous celebrities. It's a normal thing that happens in the year 2021. It's the hustle game. It's like the internet online hustling thing that is understandably very frustrating to get into because you are making the money off the backs of others. It sucks, but that's how the culture is. That's how online hustle culture really is. And Dominick Cruz just has to accept that. Because Hans isn't the only one doing this. There are many people who do it. Like, for instance, like, I took a picture with Nate Diaz and posted online on Instagram. One could say, in theory, that I'm clout chasing because I took a picture with Nate Diaz. And Dominick Cruz made a, he was arguing about how Conor McGregor took a picture with Hans, or the hypothetical of him taking a picture with Conor McGregor in order to boost himself up in clout and get even more followers and get even more money. It's a normal thing that happens, and this will never happen. There will never be a charity fight between Hans and Dominick Cruz. If Hans is the type of person who would be down for that, as in, you know, kind of like Jake and Logan Paul, where you're making your money off the popularity of others and doing weird dumb stunts in order to get clout and to get views and to get money. I get it. It could happen. It could not happen. So that's what's currently happening now with Dominick Cruz. I didn't think Dominick Cruz would be that type of person, though. To be honest with you, Dominick Cruz has always been the type of person who carries himself with a whole lot of integrity. But at the same time, this dude does seem like the type of person who takes everything far too seriously. He takes himself way too seriously at times. At some points when he does interviews, kind of come across as either overly aggressive or hostile at times. He is a very smart, very intellectually, you know, he's there. Like, he knows what he's doing. You know what he's talking about. He's very good in his talking. He's very good in presenting himself in a professional manner whenever he works for the UFC. But the guy does think very high of himself, and he is overly critical of others. And sometimes he does take himself way too seriously, which is a downer for some people. So it is thrown out there for Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor. That's the fight that people want to see. That's the fight that apparently both camps want to see. So I'm reading this right now from MMAJockey.com, from Dan Segura. SBG Ireland coach John Kavanagh reveals that his team had the wrong approach for Conor McGregor entering the rematch with Dustin Poirier. According to Kavanagh, the focus on boxing and not MMA played a major part in McGregor's TKO loss on January 23 at UFC 227. He goes on to say, and I quote, "I describe it as a game of spinning plates," Kavanagh told BTsports.com. "You're spinning the boxing plate and you realize the wrestling plate is about to stop, so you have to go spin that one, and then you have to go spin the jiu-jitsu one, you have to spin the kickboxing one. We got a bit obsessed with the boxing one. There was talk of a big boxing fight after that. Our bad, our mistake, our fault, no one to blame. We just have to make sure we have to keep spinning that kickboxing plate and all the other aspects of MMA and get ready for the rematch." Kavanagh hopes to see Poirier vs. McGregor trilogy to happen this summer, and his confidence in the MMA approach instead of boxing. We'll put them, so he believes that the MMA approach, so I'm guessing that Conor McGregor, he's training a lot more on leg kicks, he's training on utilizing a lot more clinching, a lot more of his like capoeira-esque skills, a lot more of his Muay Thai skills in his next bout against Poirier. Kavanaugh goes on to say, fair play to Dustin, Mike Brown, and the guys, Mike Brown coach, even when he was getting clocked, he got hit a couple of times hard, and he still didn't start getting to the training war or try and gas himself out for a takedown. We had to fix that technical detail. It's not like we had to fix everything, it's just a small enough area. Get us back into the whole game. The knock on him was the boxing mentality going into an MMA mentality. Conor was always famous for his movement, his ability to change stances, his balance, as he would say, and we need to bring all that back. It's there. It's under the hood. It's not like the skills need to be learned or even relearned. They just have to be reignited, and we have to start the process over again. Wouldn't it be great to do it again in summer in Vegas in front of 20,000 people screaming, and we can't get the road back on us again? So yeah, I believe he's definitely right on that. Everybody is right in their analysis in the Conor McGregor versus Poirier fights, where Conor McGregor, the way he was fighting looked off. He fought like a traditional boxer. So Conor McGregor usually is known for his leg kicks. He's got really good leg kicks. He's really good at sidestepping and moving in a horizontal plane. He likes going in and finding strange and weird angles. He, for the most part, actually is a counterpuncher. Like, he never really goes full on towards you unless he's counterpunching his way into being the one who's being active. Because in most Conor McGregor fights, he always is the one who's having his opponents lead in on towards him. He's waiting, he's fighting his right shot. Then once he's able to connect with that clean shot, he then becomes the aggressor. That's how most Conor McGregor fights usually go. The issue here with Dustin Poirier was that not only was he the aggressor of the fight here, that he was the one who was being very active. He was not throwing out leg kicks. His stance was far different from everything else he's done in the past. In his last bout against Dustin Poirier, he was moving in a vertical plane. He wasn't finding any weird angles. He was fighting Dustin Poirier as if it was a boxing match. And that made it very difficult for Conor McGregor because Dustin Poirier, utilizing both his boxing and his kickboxing skills, just leg kicked over and over again on the knee of Conor McGregor. And when Joe Rogan was talking about the difference between MMA and boxing, he's a firm believer that boxers have a completely horrible stance. They have a horrible stance as it pertains to fighting in an MMA octagon. It's because their leading leg is in front of them. They're not preventing the takedowns. It's being revealed wide open for leg kicks. The way how boxers fight is far different from how MMA fighters fight. I will say this right now. Boxers have a very stiff movement in terms of their footwork. If they were to fight against somebody who is a kickboxer or someone who is kicking, they leave themselves wide open for kicks. They leave themselves open for takedowns, and they leave themselves all open also for clinching. Like, boxing just doesn't translate all that well in an octagon when you're fighting against fighters who are multi-dimensional, who are very dynamic. Even great boxers like Max Holloway, even he himself, he doesn't move like a boxer. I know it's strange. The guy primarily fights in boxing, but his boxing and his movement does not correlate to an actual boxing ring. He's adjusting his boxing relative to what's going on in an MMA octagon. That's why he does some leg kicks. He does some body kicks. He's fading in for some jabs, and he goes and he constantly switches stances over and over again. For boxing, yes, there are stance switching, but it's a lot more rigid. It's a lot more stiff in boxing, and a lot less dynamic in an MMA octagon. So for the rematch between Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor, what I expect from this third bout is we're going to see a little bit of the old Conor McGregor. I'm not saying that Conor McGregor should ditch all the boxing. No. He should be able to bring along his boxing to make himself a better MMA fighter. That's what MMA is, right? Mixed martial arts. You're bringing different aspects and different elements of every martial arts and putting it onto one. That's why we got some karate guys. That's why you have some taekwondo people. That's why you got some jiu-jitsu people. They're taking elements and making themselves a better fighter, like Khabib Nurmagomedov. So Khabib, he definitely is not the best boxer in the world. Far from it. But he's able to use some aspects of his boxing game to go help him become a better wrestler because he's using his boxing skills to go and bait in his opponents to go shoot him for a takedown. And for Conor McGregor, from what I'm guessing, going into the third bouts, we're going to see Conor McGregor use a wee bit of that boxing and then constantly stance switching into his regular kickboxing stances. If he can do that and make his opponent, make Dustin Poirier, constantly think, oh, Is this guy going to go in for a clinch? Oh, is he going to go be a headhunter and try to box with me? Oh, is he going to go for a high left kick? Oh, is he going to go kick me in the leg the entire time? What's he going to do here? And that level of unpredictability is one reason why people love Conor McGregor. Because it was hard to figure out the puzzle that was McGregor. Because he had so many weapons. He had a lot of weapons to go at you and knock you out. And when we saw Conor McGregor fight against Poirier the second time in the rematch, it felt he was very stiff. He was very rigid. He wasn't as quick. There was a very little movement happening. And he just didn't bite into anything that Dustin Poirier was doing. There are openings that McGregor should have taken advantage of, coming in from the leg kicks of Poirier. But because he's so fixated, so stuck into that boxing mentality, that boxing mindset, he was only countering whenever Poirier threw out a punch. He never countered off a kick. He never checked a kick. He was never countering off a body kick. He wasn't going in, throwing him some feints, and used the full octagon into its maximum potential. He's not sidestepping. He's not moving in a horizontal plane. He's moving like a traditional, basic boxer. And once again, there's nothing wrong developing these boxing skills. You just have to add it in alongside your MMA skills, alongside his capoeira, alongside his kickboxing, alongside his Muay Thai. If you can put it all together, Conor McGregor is one of the best fighters in the world. But he had tunnel vision. Kavanaugh, he pretty much said that he was tunnel vision, that the entire camp, he had tunnel vision because he was fixated in primarily on the boxing. And I'm not hearing any reports right now that Conor McGregor will come back to boxing. It seems like Conor McGregor says that he wants to be very active, and we might see a Poirier vs. McGregor fight happening this summer. McGregor, he's up for it. Poirier, he's up for it. So I expect a better performance, a better fight, and a better outing and showing for Conor McGregor if he were to fight against Dustin Poirier for the third time.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play. This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
And we are back. Once again, you're listening to the GSMC MMA podcast. I'm your host, Arnel De Leon. And I do want to discuss Khamzat Chimaev here. I am looking every day. And if there's any updates in Khamzat Chimaev. Is he active? Is he not active? What's going on with the guy? And for some reason, when I was looking through social media and I was seeing what's going on right now with Aljamain Sterling and Petyr Yan, for some reason, I instinctually thought about Khamzat Chimaev. And it's because I'm a firm believer that one of the reasons why people love sports, why they enjoy sports, is because of narratives. People love narratives. They love storylines. Like, what is happening here? We instinctually place these ideas like, oh, we got the good guy, the bad guy, we got protagonists, we got antagonists. It used to be a thing just a couple years ago that Khabib Nurmagomedov was seen as the antagonist, as the bad guy. There were a lot of people who really didn't like Khabib, and we had our main protagonists. We had Conor McGregor, we had the Diaz brothers, we had Tony Ferguson. 3 years ago, you were telling me, who do the MMA audience like? Who do they enjoy watching? Who are they supportive of? Many of them will go say Conor, Nate Diaz, Tony Ferguson. We enjoy these likable characters, and one fighter that many people did not like initially was Khabib Nurmagomedov, and I was in that train also. I still remember this, where me, my brother, and one of my buddies went off to a bar. And then we saw a Khabib. I'm not sure what the fight was. I think it was Khabib versus Michael Johnson. So it was Khabib versus Michael Johnson. And for some reason, me, the group of people I was with, and everyone else in the bar was instinctually booing this guy. We're all booing this guy. We're all saying, boo, go back to Russia. We're saying all these inappropriate things. And even the audience that were in attendance for that fight between Michael Johnson and Khabib, they were all booing Khabib and cheering for Johnson. We instinctually place, oh man, this is the person we want to cheer for. Here's the good guy, here's the bad guy. There are narratives happening in MMA. For instance, people wanted to see Alistair Overeem defeat Brock Lesnar. It's true. People want to see Cain Velasquez defeat Brock Lesnar. We have these narratives. We want to see some fighters lose. You want to see some fighters win, whether it be they come across as unlikable, whether some fighters come across as likable. For the Wonderboy Stephen Thompson versus Tyron Woodley fights, the majority of people wanted Wonderboy Stephen Thompson to win. Not because Wonderboy Stephen Thompson was a better fighter than Tyron Woodley, was because Tyron Woodley, and I agree with Dana White in this, Tyron Woodley can come across as incredibly unlikable. He can be very unlikable. Same thing with Tito Ortiz. There are some fighters who naturally come across as unlikable, and there are just some fighters who the audience naturally gravitates into liking or disliking. And for the Aljamain Sterling versus Petyr Yan fight, when it comes to fighters who we like and dislike, it's kind of indifferent now. There's a level of indifference with those two fighters, because going into the Aljo versus Petyr Yan fight, the narrative going in was Petyr Yan, great fighter, Aljamain Sterling, fun grappler, fun fighter. Who do you want to see win here? And now it's kind of shifting. Aljamain Sterling, before his bout against Petyr Yan, I can safely say that he was well liked among the MMA community. He was well liked, well received. People thought him as a fun guy, great grappler, fun striker, must watch TV. Look at Petyr Yan, same thing also. Except a little bit more, except he's a lot less flashier and more like, this guy's going to come in, he destroys you. Aljamain Sterling was, this guy's a fun guy, he's going to go wreck you with some fun, spectacular moves. That was Aljo's shtick. And even in the presentation, that's how it was. Because if you look at the presentation on both fighters, in the promo packages, in the videos leading up to their bouts, there was her narrative here. Petyr Yan is the destroyer. Aljamain Sterling is the weird, fun guy who can do spectacular, amazing things. And then after that bout, in social media, we're having Aljamain Sterling taking pictures with his family and friends, claiming himself to be the champ. After 24 hours prior to that, he calls himself, not really a champion. And so there are a lot of narratives going on right now with Aljamain Sterling, as he's kind of being placed in a certain light where MMA fans are different. We like good guy versus bad guys. We like certain narratives. We like certain stories. But when both fighters come across a certain way, come across negative, come across as unlikable, with Petyr Yan doing an illegal knee strike and Aljamain Sterling holding a belt, claiming himself to be the champion after losing to what the majority of people believe to be 4 rounds of action, well, who do people like then? And I'm thinking about likability, because one fighter that the general MMA audience loves right now is Khamzat Chimaev. Khamzat Chimaev and Islam Makhachev are currently holding that narrative that comes in from our love with Khabib. Because initially, we don't like Khabib, and then Khabib Nurmagomedov won our respect. He won our respect, and now this leads to people like me, like going online, looking into more in Dagestan, into Khabib's fight camp, and then we go see fighters like Islam Makhachev, and we go see fighters like Khamzat Chimaev. These fighters who we look at are like, oh my goodness, these guys are just like Khabib, like spectacular wrestlers, incredibly humble, nice, sincere, family person. We like that. These fighters from Dagestan, they look and come across as incredibly likable. And the way how Khamzat Chimaev, what he's doing right now, I'm trying to see, hey, when is he coming back? When is he coming back? Because people want to see Khamzat. I want to see Khamzat. I'm very disappointed that we're going to see Khamzat Chimaev versus Leon Edwards not happening. I wanted to see that fight. It's not going to happen. Now we're going to see Belal Muhammad against Leon Edwards. That's a fight that I know is going to be exciting, that I love. Belal Muhammad is one of the more underrated fighters in all the UFC. Without a doubt about that, I think the guy should belong in a top 5 of a division. But I want to see Khamzat Chimaev over Belal Muhammad. That's the reality of things. I don't know what the status is for Khamzat. I hope he does come back. But if he's not healthy or fit, I don't want him to be forced to go compete. I really don't. Khamzat Chimaev, if you go follow the social media for him, he is bleeding out blood. This guy is coughing up blood. And he apparently has lung issues. And then Dana White goes on to say, well, mixed martial arts, it's an opportunity, not a career. Well, no one should be penalized or be forced into not taking an opportunity. Because it's an opportunity. You either take it or you don't take it. It's not like, oh, if you don't take this opportunity, then you'll lose something. No, you can only gain from opportunities. You can't lose anything. So for Dana White to go say, I am in complete disagreement in that Dana White should go out in public and say, oh yeah, Khamzat Chimaev, he's ready to go. Khabib, he's ready to go. Because you're not them. I am waiting from Khamzat's camp, from Khabib's camp, to go and say straight up, we are not fighting, or we're not ready, or we're not interested, or I am readily available in this time. That's the thing that I'm waiting for, which leads me to an article from BloodYellow.com that the head article being written by Mookie Alexander says rising UFC prospect coughing up blood can compete at UFC Vegas 22 due to COVID-19. So another UFC fighter has revealed the serious effects of COVID-19 as his physically ravaged his body. So light heavyweight prospect Jamal Hill was supposed to fight against submission specialist Paul Craig at UFC Vegas 22 on March 20, which at the time of this recording right now is only 1 week away. The matchup has been postponed. In a lengthy video on his Instagram page, Hill detailed all the symptoms he's had and includes. So this transcription is being transcribed from MMAfighting.com. And our quote, "The fight has been postponed. It's not canceled. I haven't pulled out of anything. I specifically called and asked them to make sure they kept the same match intact. I'm having some complications with COVID. I contracted COVID a little over a week ago, and it ain't even effing good for me. I started out with a fever. It's been dealing with all type of symptoms ever since then, including chest tightness, chest congestion. My breathing is off, and as recent as yesterday, I coughed up blood. I spit some mucus out, and there was blood inside of it. So, F what anybody's talking about, my health is in question. When my health is in question, that's going to be my undivided attention." Which is completely understandable there. So, from both Khamzat Chimaev and Cody Garbrandt, they are handling effects. They're dealing with effects related to COVID, which involves, I think for Cody Garbrandt, it was his left arm was overly swollen. Like, it was overly swollen, and he was feeling pain on it, and next thing you know, he can barely move it. And they have Khamzat Chimaev, who is spitting blood. He is spitting blood. That is something that somebody definitely has to go link into. They gotta link into it. Now, I am happy that we are having, fights. I love it. I love the fact that we're having fights, that sports is being normalized. But it's also not just happening here. It's also happening in the NBA. A lot of players and their families have been impacted by COVID. And it's a very horrible thing. I'm a firm believer that athletes should go and prioritize their health, their physical health, and their mental health over just having to go for monetary gain. I was watching an episode of MMA on Point, which all of you, by the way, should subscribe. Follow MMA on Point on YouTube. It is a great channel. I say it is the best YouTube channel that pertains to mixed martial arts. Well-informed people, well-informed journalists who look into the world of mixed martial arts. They're also great fans, just like you guys. So they're having discussion on Khamzat, on Khabib, and this strange willingness of Dana White to kind of pressure his fighters or give out public statements talking in behalf of the fighters. I'm a firm believer that if you're having a discussion on mental and physical health, that should be left private unless, it's coming in directly from the person or somebody who's properly representing them. Dana White does not represent the values or the beliefs or, he's not even a doctor. He's not a doctor. He's not a medical professional. He shouldn't be talking in behalf to the public on what's happening with Khabib. I believe somebody from Khabib's camp should be talking. I believe somebody from Chimaev should be talking. And we've had it. We've had reports from Chimaev's camp in that he is expected to go retire. He's expected to go retire early. He's not going to be active. It seems very unlikely that he will go and commit to MMA for a while, considering what's happening with his physical bodies. Now, whether or not that is completely true, doesn't matter. Do I think Khamzat Chimaev might make a comeback? Maybe. That's a possibility. It's a door that is being left open. But I don't like the idea that Dana White is coming out being like, oh, by the way, this guy's just being emotional. The guy's just being emotional. It's okay. And it's right now kind of a trending thing on Twitter, where whenever there is a fighter who is going through an injury, there's always someone on Twitter saying the words, he's just being emotional. He'll get over it. And I think that's very ignorant. I'll be honest with you, I think it's a very ignorant thing to say for anybody to disregard physical and mental health for an athlete, just saying, they're just being soft. They're just being emotional. He's not right in the head. I think that is very disrespectful. I think that is really immature, and it's just morally unright to go say, hey, this fighter here that's going through all this like emotional stuff right now, with family members dying, coughing up blood, physical and health concerns, mental health concerns. Oh man, they'll get over it. They're just emotional right now. They're just mentally weak. I genuinely don't understand how Dana White can do that. Now, I understand he's honest, and that's one aspect of Dana White that I really like. I like the fact that he's blatantly honest. But then there is like a limit and a barrier that you should go with it. Like, if you believe that Khamzat Chimaev really is being emotional, do you have to go out in public and say, he's just being overly emotional right now? And the same thing also applies for Khabib. Do you have to say, Khabib, he's just overly emotional right now. He'll come to his senses. Because what does that do? How does that in any way benefit the company, considering the fact that, you know what? The UFC roster is huge. It's been huge for years. It's been a recurring issue with the UFC, and it's been said a bunch of times that the roster is overinflated. It's overinflated in some parts, and yet underinflated others. It's weird. Like, they are trying to... Like, there are some divisions that have a plethora of good prospects, and there are some divisions that are very top-heavy, like from, 1 through 6 or 1 through 7, or their division is, deep, 5 through 10, or there's some divisions that don't have any, up-and-coming people coming to the rankings. The divisions are very inconsistent, and the fact that it's very stacked means... And there should be no problem trying to go find somebody to go and take the mantle of Khamzat, of Khabib. Now, of course, those two fighters are very special. Very special fighters. You can argue, say, once-in-a-generation level fighters. But at that moment, if one fighter is unavailable, then Dana White now has the opportunity to go prep up and push another fighter. I don't get why he doesn't do that. You're listening to the GSMC MMA podcast, coming back after a short break here. See you soon.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
And we're back. So first off, Dan Hardy, he gets released. He gets released for reasons involving him having an altercation with an employee. And I'm reading this article from BJPen.com. Dan Hardy released a statement after being let go from the UFC. These being written in by Cole Shelton. Dan Hardy has cleared the air regarding his departure from the UFC. Earlier this week, a report came out that the former UFC fighter was let go due to an incident on Fight Island. Immediately, Hardy took to social media to comment on the matter, but it has now taken to his website, fullreptile.com, to release a lengthy statement. He's going to say, and I quote, "Apologies for my silence on this current situation," Hardy began. "I'm still chasing answers privately, and it's taking some time. This is what I can say. At this point, it was a verbal disagreement between myself and a member of the UFC staff. It was forthright, but not aggressive and specific to work. I have apologized to the individual for the embarrassment they must have felt, as a small handful of our colleagues from the British media were present. We are taking a brief break from recording UFC 258 content. A few hours after the Holloway Cater event had concluded, When the disagreement occurred, the conversation could have definitely taken place in a better location and under better circumstances. BT Sports have not fired me and are still keen on working with me in some capacity. I'm appreciative of their interest in a continued collaboration. Thank you all for the support in the comments across our accounts. They are paying attention and making efforts, although there is pressure to push me out entirely. Dan Hardy then said his site's credentials were revoked before UFC 59 despite people already being in Las Vegas. He has also yet to hear or speak to Dana White about the matter. It has been suggested that reconciliation between myself and the UFC is possible, and of course I hope that is the case. I have yet to speak to or hear from Dana and get a better understanding of his perspective on the situation. The result of their brief and private investigation has left me with a little closure, and hope that at some point I'm able to get more information of what I've actually been accused of. I'm forever a fan of the UFC and dedicated in service of MMA. I appreciate all of your kind words and support, both privately and publicly, and have lots of exciting offers to consider, Hardy concluded. So what do you think about Dan Hardy's statement? It's vague. I don't know what happened. I'm not really sure what is going on. So I can't really say anything. All I know that Dan Hardy, it has been referenced that, he does have a tendency of flipping out towards officials. We're not sure what happened here. I do remember Dana White did say that if anybody, whether it be a fighter or just somebody who works for the organization, if they go and put their hands on a UFC staff member or official, they'll be fired immediately. So what I'm guessing right now, Dan Hardy had a physical altercation with somebody, and that physical altercation led to him being let go. That's all I can say. Dan Hardy, he hasn't said anything. His statement really didn't mean anything. It really didn't. It was him essentially saying, there's some issues, there's some problems, I apologize to that person for the problems. Leaving things very vague. I am interested to see what Dana White's perspective is on this, because we see different sides of Dana White. At one moment he's like, yeah man, he can do whatever he wants to do, he's a grown adult, sure, freedom of speech, yada yada. And then there are other moments where he's like, I can't let these fighters get away saying such nonsense. It's kind of weird with Dana White. It's like sometimes he believes in this, sometimes he doesn't believe in that. I'm definitely interested in what Dana White has to say. So, it's official. Dan Hardy, he's out of the UFC. He'll be working with BT Sports, but he's officially out of the UFC. Now, obviously, I don't know the whole story, the whole situation. There's a real possibility he could come back, but I would like to know what actually happened. What led to this guy, who seemed like he had job safety, everything's secure for the guy, and then all of a sudden, he's let go. No signs pointed at this person being let go, no rumors, no stories being thrown out there, so something bad must have really happened on Fight Island for him to be let go that quick and that spontaneous. So for our other story here, we have, as we all know, Miguel Anderson, Amanda Nunes. They were the co-main events for UFC 259. So we go from this fighter being in the co-main event, fighting against the greatest women's fighter ever in MMA history, to no longer having a contract. What happened here? Well, Miguel Anderson, she apparently doesn't have a contract with the UFC anymore. I'm reading this article from David Martins, MMAfighting.com. Headline being, Miguel Anderson no longer under UFC contract following loss to Amanda Nunes. Miguel Anderson will find a new fighting home. The former featherweight title contender is no longer under contract with the UFC after completing her deal following a loss to Amanda Nunes this past weekend. UFC officials confirmed Anderson completed her contract with the promotion when speaking to MMA Fighting on Tuesday. During a live stream on Twitch, Anderson confirmed her time with the UFC had come to an end, though she also said the promotion planned to dump the entire women's featherweight division. Multiple sources speaking to MMAfighting.com denied that the UFC had any plans to get rid of the featherweight division. After Nunes' dominant win this past weekend on UFC 259, UFC President Dana White stated the weight class would stay around as long as she wanted to defend the title at 145 pounds. Nunes, by the way, 3-0, double champion. She has defeated Chris Cyborg, Felicia Spencer, Miguel Anderson. Who's next on MMA opponents? It was speculated that we could see Kayla Harrison. 145, that seems like the perfect division for Kayla Harrison to go fight against Amanda Nunes. Even though Kayla Harrison is a natural 155 pounder, I doubt we're going to see Amanda Nunes compete at 155 against Kayla Harrison. So, I believe that if there is going to be anybody to compete against Nunes at featherweight, it has to be Kayla Harrison. And Kayla Harrison, she's got maybe 2 years away. She's maybe 2 years away. She's 2 years away from competing against Nunes because she's got 1 year left in her contract. And then after that point, then she has to go through a negotiating period. And there's also a contract, like it's written in the contract that there has to be a buffer period, like in between her, like leaving her contract and fighting another organization. So we could say 2 years at best is when we might see Kayla Harrison compete in the UFC, who is probably one of the top fighters out there in the world. She's one of the best pound-for-pound women fighters in the entire world, and is certainly somebody who I believe can definitely give Amanda Nunes a run for her money. Heck, even Chris Cyborg a run for her money in terms of being a future world champion. As for Anderson, though, her run with the UFC comes to an end after she amassed a 3-3 record with a promotion after joining the roster from Invicta FC 2018. She is an ex-Invicta champion, suffering losses to 2 of her first 3 fights, including bouts against Holly Holm and her debut. The Australian fighter eventually earned a title shot with back-to-back wins over Zara Fendos Santos and Norma Dumont, but now it appears she'll be looking for a new promotion. Now, what is the future for the UFC Women's Featherweight division? Well, according to Amanda Nunes, she says that 145 is where she's at her best. She's cutting a lot less weight in competing in 145. And Amanda Nunes, there's like nobody who I can look at who competes at featherweight, whether it be Norma Dumont or, Zara Fernando Santos, 2 fighters who also compete in the women's bantamweight division. There doesn't seem to be any incentive, honestly, for Felicia Spencer to go compete and beat anybody at featherweight because, well, there's nobody there to beat. There really isn't. The only reason why you want to go compete at featherweight for Amanda Nunes is because she wants to go keep that second belt. And also, there is weaker competition at featherweight compared to bantamweight because Amanda Nunes would much preferably fight against any of the bantamweight fighters at 145. To which Nunes will have the natural advantage. So the future of the featherweight division, complete toss-up, with Megan Anderson going away, with Felicia Spencer fighting against Danielle Wolf on May 22nd. The featherweight division seems pretty much, it seems like a wasteland. It seems pretty empty. We don't know what the future is. So if Amanda Nunes does what she's been doing right now recently, where she took an entire year defending the featherweight belt, it is expected that for the rest of the year of 2021 and potentially the early part of 2022, we're going to see her compete exclusively at bantamweight. She'll defend the women's bantamweight title, and the next time we see her compete at featherweight and defend her featherweight belt might be the tail end of 2022 or early 2023. Now, how does one fix this division? How do you do it? You have no rankings. Any fighter who would compete at featherweight is competing at bantamweight. We had an Ultimate Fighter to decide who will be competing against Chris Cyborg at featherweight, but then all of them who compete at the Ultimate Fighter show for the women's featherweight division are now at bantamweight. So what's going on there? What I'm guessing right now, I think a good idea would be that there would be an extra incentive for fighters to go move up in rankings. And so, for instance, you could be the match booker here. You could be the booker, and you can give fighters the incentive to move up in weight class. So if you are, let's say, the number 7th or number 10th rank women's bantamweight, you can give them an incentive. Hey, we will pay you extra money to go compete at featherweight, and you skip the line. You are no longer number 10 or number 7 in the bantamweight division. You are now ranked number 2 or number 3. And all you gotta do is fight against Felicia Spencer or Danielle Wolf, beat them, and then you become the new number 1 contender. You can either do that or continue to compete amongst the top 10 in the bantamweights, and you gotta go through a huge winning streak against really tough competition in order to become the number 1 contender for the bantamweight title. So if you think about it, let's say the featherweight title is path A, and the bantamweight title is path B. If you're a women's fighter who can compete at either division at 135 or 145, if you look at both paths, the path A is the easier one. Competing at 145 is easier. You're cutting a lot less weight. There's little to no competition there. And if you just get even 2 fights in a row, getting that 2-fight winning streak, you might go and become a number 1 contender. Megan Anderson. Did Megan Anderson deserve a title fight despite being 3-2 in her UFC career? Megan Anderson was 3-2 going into her fight against Nunes. She was 3-2. A lot of hype was behind Megan Anderson. I never bought it. In her bout against Norma Dermont, which was the victory she had in order to secure herself the title fight. I looked at that fight and I was like, I'm not impressed. I'm not. She is very susceptible to clinches. She's got a notable ground game, a notable jiu-jitsu game, but when it really mattered the most, she could never really use it to go stop fighters from taking her down, or her using that as a way to put herself in a good position from bottom position. She didn't use it against Amanda Nunes, and once again, Amanda Nunes, one of the all-time greats, and she is an underrated grappler, an underrated wrestler. I made the prediction that Amanda Nunes would defeat Megan Anderson through her grappling. But Megan Anderson, she's somebody that the UFC really pushed hard. Like her, Macy Barber, Paige Van Zandt, and right now Maria Gapova. These are all prospects that the UFC wants to push. Because I'll say this right now. In the flyweight and the bantamweight division, there is no hot prospect coming in who you're looking at and like, oh my goodness, this girl is going to be the future. Because when you look at the other divisions, whether it be like an unranked fighter or just outside the top 10, like Islam Makhachev or Khamzat Chimaev, or even like Zabit. I know I'm mentioning all the Dagestan boys, but all these fighters coming to the UFC, they had a whole lot of hype behind them, outside top 10 or prospects, and then they're slowly making their way and climbing up. They're fulfilling their promise as these are the prospects you gotta watch. I don't really see that in the women's flyweight and in the women's bantamweight divisions. I don't. And it doesn't exist at all in the women's featherweight division. Now, there definitely are some prospects in the women's bantamweight division to go look after who are outside the top 15. You got fighters like Tracy Cortez and Macy Chiasson. But when you look at the rest of the rankings here, a lot of them are at 500 with like 4-4, 5-5, 6-6 records. They're just at the 500 mark, and yet they're part of the top 10. And it's a head scratcher for me because other than Jabina Raname, there's nobody in like Juliana Pena. And Juliana Pena is really funny because she's calling out Amanda Nunes. She's been calling out Nunes, and a lot of people are just on her because nobody expects Pena to go pull off a victory on Nunes. But she's like overly hyping herself up about it. She's been going on a tirade, being super active on social media, and you gotta respect Juliana Pena for putting her name out there. But outside of top 15, top 10 rankings, there's not that much people to go be excited for, other than maybe two women. But then as you drop down, it starts becoming really bleak. Yikes. Note those in the pound-for-pound rankings. Strangely enough, I am going to start this podcast with Aljamain Sterling again, and with Aljamain Sterling, because the UFC pound-for-pound rankings are up. The ailing Khamzat Chimaev, he has been removed from the welterweight rankings. Khamzat Chimaev, who we don't know what his status is, he's out of the welterweight rankings. Aljamain Sterling has replaced Conor McGregor as the number 15th ranked best men's pound-for-pound fighter in the UFC. Wouldn't expect that, but it is what it is. And so with that being said, that will bring us to a close for the news brief. You have been an awesome audience. Thank you for listening. And all I gotta say is thank you. Thank you for tuning to the GSMC MMA podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask you, please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts MMA Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.